It's recording. Yep. Yep. Somebody got the microphone on? Speaker. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to move into the meeting proper, and could I ask Aileen to call for the Sethering and to make any apologies, please?
Good morning, members. If I could get you to confirm your attendance when I call your name, please. Councillor Barton.
Yes, thanks.
Councillor McGee.
Yep.
Councillor Friel.
I'm here, Aileen. Thanks.
Councillor Cowan.
Here.
Councillor Sangster.
Here, thanks.
Councillor Mabin.
Yeah, good morning.
Morning. Councillor Maitland.
Here.
Councillor Lennox.
All in here.
Councillor Crawford.
Yeah.
Councillor Watts.
I'm here.
Councillor Filson. Councillor Hogg.
I'm here, thanks.
Councillor Kyle.
Here, thank you.
Thanks, Aileen. Members, we're going to move on to item 1 on the agenda, and that is any declarations of interest. Yep, Councillor Sangster.
Yeah, thank you, through your chair. Just regarding item 3, the planning application, I just want to put in a transparency declaration. One of the objectors is known to me. I also attended a community council meeting at Grange Howard where some of the objectors were there. I made it very clear at that meeting that I couldn't comment due to being on being a live planning application, and also the applicant attended one of my local surgeries at Bonneton, but again I made it clear that I couldn't comment or offer any advice in terms of things because it was a live planning application. So I feel I'm able to look at it objectively though. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Sangster. Councillor McGee.
Just similar transparency regarding item number 4. I'm a member of a group that's taken over a transfer of football park in Comores. I feel I can deal with this objectively. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? No, I think we're okay. Okay, I'm going to move on to item 2 in the agenda, and that is the hearing procedure. I'm going to ask Aileen to remind members of that procedure.
Good morning. The procedure for this morning is that the Chief Planning Officer will give details of the application that's been held. Objectors and or their agents will present their objections, and each objector will be given 5 minutes, or where there are several objectors in excess of 6, a collective 30 minutes. Members of the committee will get the opportunity to ask questions of the objectors on the submissions that they've made. Applicants and or their agents will then have a maximum of 15 minutes to present their case, and members can ask questions of the applicants at that time. The hearing will then close, and the Chief Planning Officer will address the committee and give any appropriate clarification required, and the committee will make their decision.
Thanks very much, Aileen. So members, going to move on to item 3 in the agenda, and that is planning application number 25/0090/PP, and that's proposed new dwelling house at land adjacent to 17 Maple Place, Kilmarnock, KA1 2EX by Mr. Ross Murray. And members, we do have a hearing this morning for this application. I've got 3 people wanting to speak, but there's 2 of the objectors want to speak on multiple people. Yep. So I'm proposing we give 2 of the objectors 10 minutes, and that way they can take their full allocation of 30 minutes if we're okay with that. Yep. Thanks. So the first part of the hearing we hand over to Planning Officer Fiona Finlay and Michael Main. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning, everybody. My colleague Michael Main is going to introduce and summarise the report of handling for you, members, before you. I'll cover the slides and any questions thereafter through the hearing process. And if members have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. I'll pass over to Michael, who'll just read out the presentation, and I'll get the slides ready.
Thanks, Fiona, and thank you, Chair, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This application is before committee today as it's a local application which has received more than 10 objections and requires, therefore, to be determined by this committee. The application site is located in Kilmarnock settlement boundary and is defined in the development plan, and it's in an established residential area. The application site is currently an area of grassed open space that's owned by the applicant. and a portion of the garden ground associated with the applicant's property at 17 Maple Place. Within the garden ground is a detached garage that is to be demolished to create space for the dwelling. And members had the opportunity earlier this week to visit the site and familiarise themselves with the application site and the surrounding area. The site visit did not discuss the merits of the proposal itself. The site is to the west of 17 Maple Place and sits adjacent to the small garage site containing 3 garages. The surrounding site to the northeast and west are neighbouring residential properties, and then to the south is the Kilmarnock to Troon railway line. The site is accessed from Maple Place, and the properties within Maple Place are all generally single-storey with livable space above, with the only exceptions really to the west of the site, where there's 2-storey semi-detached properties at Rowan Place. That Rowan Place can also be accessed off of Maple Place. The current application is for the erection of a single-storey dwelling house, and the dwelling house will be formed with from space within the curtilage of 17 Maple Place and using the open space as discussed previously. The site has relevant planning history, with the previous plan application 23/642/PP, which was submitted by the current application and was refused by Planning Committee in February 2024, with the applicant appealing the decision to the Scottish Government Department of Planning and Environmental Appeals, the DPEA, who upheld the decision and refused planning permission as an independent review of the refusal by the council. The application was refused by Planning Committee due to the loss of open space that was considered to contribute positively towards the character and amenity of the local area, and the lack of demonstrating an overall biodiversity net gain. Both the DPA independently upheld the decision of the planning authority to refuse permission. They advised that it was not the loss of space per se that merited the refusal of the application, but the character and amenity implications of the loss to the local neighbourhood. And I can now show you the proposed plans and photos of the surrounding area. There are also plans in the papers in front of you. So yeah, that's the site there. So the sort of the open space and the section of the garage, the garden ground with the applicant's property to the east there. And there, that's the red line site there, outlined. So that's the proposed layout, with the house sort of facing a westerly direction, and parking to the south. The applicant's proposing an area of sort of green space to the north that will remain private garden ground. And then that's the house type itself. So single story, fairly sort of generic bungalow. And then that's the site within the wider context of the Grange estate and that area of Kilmarnock. Yeah, that's taken from the local development plan. And then these are just site photos that you'll be familiar with from the other day. So that's going down into down Maple Place into the garage site there, with the proposed site on the left, and that's the open space. That wall and the garage behind the wall would be removed to make the site for the dwelling. And again, that's just another angle of the open space. And then that's looking in the northerly direction from the garages. And then that's the site from within the garden ground of the F17 Maple Place. So that would be partially part of the site. And now turning back to the report, Ayrshire Roads Alliance, Scottish Water and Network Rail have all had no objections to the application. 24 parties have objected to the proposal. 62 parties have written in support of the application. All the representations, all the points are noted within the report at paragraph 22 and are split into objection, support, and where relevant, non-material planning matters that cannot be taken into account in reaching a decision. Members are advised that non-material planning matters include land ownership, property values, precedents and occupancy. Sections 25 and 37.2 of the Town and Country Planning Scotland Act, as amended, require that applications are determined in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. For the purpose of this application, the applicable policies relevant to the application are contained solely within MPF 4 and the LDP2, East Ayrshire Local Development Plan 2, and it's these policies that are considered in detail in this report. As per paragraph 27 of the report, the key considerations for the application are the principle of development of a residential dwelling in this location, the impact of the development on the amenity of the area, the design of the proposed dwelling, the provision of private open space, the impacts on development on the existing road network, the impacts of the development on biodiversity, the impacts of the development on climate change, developer contributions and other environmental impacts, and then any other matters as well. Given the assessment of the application within the report, it's considered that the proposed development would be to the detriment of the established residential development pattern, will result in the loss of open space, which currently makes a positive contribution to local character and amenity of the neighbourhood. But developing the open space, the open nature of Maple Place and the aesthetic character created by the open aspect of the open space will be detrimentally affected. While the proposal would have an open aspect to the north of the site, this ultimately remains private garden ground and is not public open space and does not adequately compensate or replicate the appearance and benefits of the existing open space arrangement within the localised area of the Grange estate. The revisions made through the proposal do improve the development and go some way to addressing the previous concerns raised. However, they are considered to still be insufficient to successfully address all of the concerns by the planning service or the conclusions set out in the reporter's decision of the appeal on the previous application. The proposal is considered to be contrary to policies Res 1, Res 3 Part 2 and Des 1 of the East Ayrshire Local Development Plan 2 and then policies 14 and 16 of MPF 4. The non-compliance with detailed policies means the proposal is also contrary to overarching policy SS2. It is noted in that the application is noted that the applicant has lodged a supporting planning statement, which as a material consideration has been given full consideration in the assessment of the application. However, this does not justify the approval of the application. The points made by supporters are noted, and those of the objecting parties, both of which have been fully reviewed as material considerations, but the letters of support do not lend sufficient weight to the application to support its approval. The letters of objection raise considerations which align with the position that the application is contrary to planning policy where relevant. The application is therefore recommended for refusal as per the reasons attached to committee report starting on page 22. Back to you, Chair.
Thanks, Michael and Fiona. Members, we move on to part 2 of the hearing procedure. And that's where the objectors and all their agents will present their objections to the committee in support of their written objections. Now, I'm going to ask Mr. Alan Kerr if he'd like to come up to the lectern. I think Mr. Kerr is going to be speaking on behalf of himself, Mr. John Kerr, Graham Kerr and Valerie Kerr. So I'm going to allocate 10 minutes for that one.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to address you here today. Unfortunately, here we are again 1 year and a few months later down the line. I'm sure that through your years of experience, the committee will no doubt recognise there's been an abnormal and inflated amount of support for an application of this nature, with views that can only be thought as being deliberately provocative and downright inflammatory. I put it to you today that it's not a true depiction of the views of those in the impact zone, and offers an artificial representation of the authentic level of backing in the area. Look coldly at the stats. There are 31 homes in Maple Place and Round Place. Discounting the family of the applicant due to them having a vested interest, there are only 2 other households in this section of the estate that lend support to the development. We then get backing from further afield, spinning tales of how this new build would be used to support a family member of the applicant, improve an untidy space and enhance the area. Likewise, how it suffered from neglect and it serves no useful purpose and the development would benefit the community. Firstly, this determined bid to tug at your heartstrings through speaking of the purpose of the build should be ignored completely. Supporters mentioned the family member 13 times in their comments, or the build providing a much needed home. Despite the clear conclusion of the planning committee reached last year and forthrightly stating the reasons proffered were not material concerns in respect to planning, we are faced again with another application grounded in the same terms. To be clear to everyone here today, this reason is not a planning matter and should not be considered by the committee. There is zero benefit to the community allowing a private dwelling to be built. The mere suggestion of this in support is nonsense. It would not be a usable asset for anyone out with the family. I would confidently advocate that over 90% of the supporters cannot even see the area from their homes or would be affected by the development. The planning team could easily confirm this fact directly to the committee from the information submitted without fear of breaching any data protection laws. The supporters would never have to suffer or bear the vista, but they seek to have it levied upon us. As the site visit would no doubt demonstrate, it would only be directly visible to those who were included in the neighbour notification notice, and as such, these are the views which should carry most weight. There's an established process for neighbour notification with good reason, and that's where our views should be placed highest in the minds of the committee. I strongly urge the committee to take maximum cognizance of the distant localities of the supporters and the total lack of impact this development would have upon them by dismissing their backing as irrelevant to this application. We can examine a few of the comments. No value to residents. Yes, there is. It provides a soft green buffer between the parking area and 17 Maple Place. A positive impact on the estate. Those in support seek to strip from us the protections of the local development plan. The views are so analogous that they appear to have been provided with the same misleading information or having been subject to a coordinated attempt at coercion to gain their support. I fail to see how increasing the density of concrete and cramming a new build into a tight area would improve the visual appeal of the estate. Crucially, the committee rejected a previous similar application and the Scottish Government also rejected the appeal, both having acknowledged the negative impact it would have on those beside it. Supporters attempt to mitigate the application by implying that the area will be well maintained. There's an enormous caveat to that. How can any of you have any confidence in such a statement when it's crystal clear the applicant is the one that has allowed it to get into the state it's currently in since taking ownership? East Ayrshire Council regularly cut the grass and indeed continue to do so after the sale before being told not to by the applicant. This is smoke and mirrors at play, obscuring the genuine facts, and the neglect of the area has been done in a blatant attempt to minimise the importance and value to those who live immediately next to it. The owner could easily correct this by planting wildflowers, which would brighten the area. The attempt to influence the committee's decision via the group of supporters, who I remind you by and large live away from the specified area, by the use of negative language to attack or demean the area, should be embarrassing for the applicant. 74 damaging comments recorded about the area in its current state. Not one supporter chose to address the elephant in the room. It's his land, and he has clearly chosen the path of neglecting the area to further his cause, attempting to lay the blame at others. It's painfully clear what the end game has always been in this matter. Neglect the area to make it look bad and then play the white knight with a scheme to develop it. Members of the committee, I make this appeal direct to you. In legal terms, using either reasonable doubt or the balance of probabilities, you cannot in all good conscience sanction this application and make the choice to award this behaviour by allowing the applicant to trample over and forever disrupt the life of the board and community. I would urge you to take the advice of the planning department and uphold their decision to refuse the appeal. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Mr. Kerr. I'd just like to stay there for a minute. We'll now open it up to the committee members for any questions they might have for you.
Yeah.
Members? No, there's no questions. So if you just return to the public gallery, thanks. The next objector to speak, I think, is Mr. Keith White. Mr. White, it'll be 5 minutes for yourself next.
Good morning and thank you for allowing me to address you this morning on this further application. Firstly, I must address the applicant and the supporters' portrayal of this green open space. To describe it as an unappealing piece of ground, an unsightly mess, and does not contribute anything positive to the area is a gross misrepresentation of its true nature and value. While it may not be a formally manicured park, it has constantly provided a green and open aspect, contributing positively to the local environment and the sense of space within a residential area. It is a place where children played, residents and public walk. It is a natural buffer that does contribute to the aesthetic and environmental quality of a neighbourhood. It is important to note that since the purchase by the applicant, he has failed to maintain it, where it has reverted to its wild state. This area now contains various dog waste bags allegedly left behind by irresponsible dog owners. Having lived here for over 4 decades, I refute the claims regarding the lack of maintenance, neglect or aesthetic value are inaccurate. These assertions appear to be a self-serving narrative aimed at justifying this development. The Council's consistent maintenance ensured it remained a safe and welcoming environment for all. The Council have in fact maintained this green space opposite on the following dates: April 14th and 30th, May 13th and June 4th. To replace this space with a new build is not only unnecessary, but fundamentally out of character with established residential development. The proposed development fails to demonstrate any genuine support for the existing community. Instead, it prioritises additional housing density over the well-being of long-standing residents. Secondly, the proximity of the proposed construction to my property presents a substantial threat to our privacy. The existing open space currently provides a natural buffer that ensures the peace and privacy of my family. However, this development will eliminate this buffer, resulting in an unacceptable intrusion into our daily lives, which will have a detrimental impact on the well-being of my family and me. The proposal does not address the potential increase in traffic and parking congestion. Our street already experiences substantial use, and adding another household may contribute to higher traffic levels. With regards to the proposed driveway configuration, this presents a serious obstruction to the existing garages to the south. Currently, they enjoy unimpeded access. However, the proposed design creates a bottleneck that will restrict their ability to access, enter and exit safely and efficiently. Presently, visitors, relatives, workers and deliveries park either north or south of the streetlight opposite my property. If approved, vehicles would park outside bedroom 1, dresser/bedroom 3, front door and porch, potentially leading to animosity. The proposed build presents significant challenges to access, public safety, privacy and parking. It poses a risk to the peaceful and tranquil enjoyment of our neighbourhood, which we have cherished for years. Again, there has been no indication as to the fate of the streetlight. The lack of clarity is unacceptable. Streetlights are essential for public safety, especially during the darker months. The absence of a clear plan for this vital piece of infrastructure raises significant questions about the applicant's commitment to community welfare. I hope you will take cognizance of the report submitted by Planning Objections Scotland on our behalf, which raised serious concerns about the lack of information regarding these new plans against the previous plans submitted. We risk eroding the very character of our neighbourhoods, replacing green open spaces with concrete and brick, sacrificing community well-being for short-term housing solutions. While I fully understand and appreciate the need for social housing, this development does not contribute to addressing the wider housing crisis. It merely benefits a single family, while negatively impacting on the lives of those living within the immediate area. We must protect our green open spaces, preserve our privacy, and ensure that any development genuinely benefits all the residents within the community. Finally, I would appeal to you to refuse this application. It is unnecessary, out of character, and fundamentally detrimental to the existing community. I thank you for your time.
Thanks, Mr. White. Members, do you have any questions for Mr. White? No, well, thank you very much. Next objector to speak is Mr. Norman Butler. Mr. Butler, I believe you're speaking on behalf of yourself and your wife, so I think we'll allocate you 10 minutes for this.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Norman Butler, and I live at number 15 Maple Place, our family home, for over 38 years now. Firstly, I'd like to state that I soundly agree with the recommendation of the report to refuse this application. I'd also like to commend the report for matching my objections and concerns with the relevant official planning policies. After just over a year, I find myself sitting here again opposing what appears to be virtually a duplicate planning application. However, I remain hopeful that the Planning Committee will once again agree with the Planning Department's decision to refuse this application. I do not intend to reiterate or qualify any of my objections already submitted, as these have already been well documented and commented on. I do wish to concentrate on the applicant's continued strategy of attempting to legitimise non-planning issues, coupled with the latest tactics of raising support in the community and beyond. This has created an unprecedented resentment, disharmony and division in the locality. As you'll be aware, the previous application did not receive any support. I suspect the reason for this was that the applicant was under the impression that the application would sail through in a similar fashion to the unconstitutional sale of the land. However, this time the applicant, probably realising that this new application may not pass planning either, has possibly adopted the tactic of canvassing family, friends, etc., and has seemingly persuaded them to submit supportive representations. I wish to point out that supporters' comments do not pertain to planning issues or give any consideration to the households that would be most affected by this development. Instead, they centre on the assumption that this house is for a family member with additional needs and that, in their opinion, the development would enhance the area. An area they refer to as, and I quote, unsightly, eyesore, untidy, derelict, unused, barren land, neglected, unmaintained, and a few other disparaging comments. These comments can only be attributed to this land since it was purchased by the applicant. This was exacerbated by the Estates Department instructing the removal of a compound at the end of the row of garages prior to the sale. The tenant of the compound and the adjoining garage maintained this area to a very high standard, as did the council for the remainder of the area. I suggest that the supporters' comments are unqualified and inaccurate, and also very insensitive to the surrounding residents, who were more than happy with the land as it was. In particular, the 3 residents whose properties face directly onto the land and who have viewed it and lived with it every day for up to 40 years. These residents are also the people that will be most adversely affected by this proposed development. They are in a far better position to know the history of the area and form an opinion than the others who are unable to even see the area from the property, or until now were probably unaware of the existence. The similarity in trend of the comments would appear to indicate there had been some sort of party line related to unsuspecting supporters. I honestly have a certain sympathy for some of the supporters who have possibly unwittingly been taken in by the applicant's rhetoric. I suggest that most of the supporters could feel embarrassed and rueful if and when they realised that they had been misled by the applicant. The applicant has never maintained this land in any shape or form since acquiring it. He's never cut the grass, edged it, or applied weed killer to the area. He has also been seen running his large commercial van up and down the grass area to make it even worse than the conditions already made it. This was possibly part of the plan to delude supporters by creating the impression that this land is indeed an eyesore. Also, for the first time, there's been an abundance of dogs' poo bags littered across the grass, and even a dead rat was found in the grass. This was reported to Environmental Health. Grange dog walkers have always had respect for the area and would not be guilty of this, so you can draw your own conclusions. The applicant would appear to be under the illusion that this is a numbers game or a popularity contest. I have been assured by planning that the actual number of representations is immaterial and it is only the relevant content that matters. Hopefully the Planning Committee are of the same mind and dismiss the non-planning issues and arguably unethical tactics. On the current planning report, there are at least 8 conditions that would be required to be met should the committee overturn the refusal. Some of these conditions have been described as likely to be unenforceable. Based on the applicant's previous disregard for planning rules and regulations, I am unconvinced that he would implement any conditions that may be attached. It is my opinion that this protracted, unsavoury debacle has been a misuse of everyone's time and effort, and I propose that the only way to resolve and conclude this disagreeable situation created by the applicant is for the land to be returned to the rightful ownership and stewardship of East Ayrshire Council. This option has already been offered to the applicant, which to date he has declined. With all of the above in mind, I therefore propose that this application should, like the previous one, be refused. Thank you for listening.
Thanks very much, Mr. Butler. Members, do you have any questions? Thank you very much, Mr. Butler. If you just return to the public gallery. A final objectors who want to speak is a Mr. Walker. Mr. Walker, it'll be 5 minutes.
Morning, everyone. Like my previous objectors, thanks for the opportunity to talk today. I'm going to have to take my glasses off because I can't see. I have submitted my objections previously in writing, many of which reiterate my concerns regarding the previous application for this area. You'll be no doubt relieved to hear that I'm not going to go through these today. The applicant, I understand the applicant has the right to request to build this property out. It's equally my right to consider this request and decide whether or not I support it. I submitted my objections in good faith, and I'm sure that you will all agree I have the right to articulate my objection of the application here today, and previously in writing without fear of threats, verbal abuse, or intimidation. In objecting to this application, I simply disagree with the applicant on the specifics of the proposal presented. The burden lies with the applicant to present a proposal which meets the criteria for maintaining a green space, the character of the area, the amenity space in the area, and addressing genuine concerns regarding access and safety for neighbours and other residents. As outlined in the planning report, this proposal, like the previous proposal, fails to achieve these criteria, and this is the reason I object to the development. As has been mentioned previously, the applicant has attempted to muddy the waters by encouraging family and friends to use rhetoric and derogatory remarks regarding this area. It would be fair to say that we have all found these remarks to be insulting and, in some cases, hurtful. This is, after all, our area. This is our home. This is where we live. They have without doubt caused fractions and tension within the larger community. It's difficult to walk by your neighbour who you know has put in a compensate, saying the area you live in is an eyesore and is horrible. And it would be really easy to feel anger and resentment towards these people. However, on reflection, many of us here today could mobilise similar, if not greater, number of friends and family to object to this proposal if we asked them. How many of our friends and family would, at the drop of a hat, say what we asked them to say, thinking they're helping their friends? Well-intentioned, no doubt, but certainly biased and certainly clearly ill-informed. I will also only make one comment regarding the comments on the condition of the land. It's a ludicrous assertion. It's the applicant's land. If it's an eyesore and it doesn't need a house built on it to return it to its previous condition, all it needs is the grass to be cut and the owner to take responsibility for the care of his property. Something that everybody in the area does religiously and to maintain the pride of their area. This process has created what can only be described as a toxic environment within our local community, for some of the reasons I've just given. It's reasonable to assert that this situation has been triggered by Ayrshire Estates Department's decision to sell this piece of land, an exercise which has been acknowledged as being flawed and that there was no consultation with the planning department prior to sale. Despite admitting that this land sale was flawed, the response from ASA would seem to be, sorry, we messed up, lessons will be learned, etc., etc. Meanwhile, the local community, our community, has been left to sort out this mess. As a result, we're all confronted with a future, and this meeting today illustrates that. This is the second time in 2 years, with a future where emotions are stretched and resentments will grow due to this error. I would urge East Ayrshire Council to end the platitudes and take responsibility for this mistake. It's your fault. Please sort it. Regardless of the outcome of this committee today, I will endeavour to treat all participants in this process with the respect, civility and dignity. I sincerely hope that the applicant and his supporters are willing and able to do the same. Finally, I end by asking you to support the Planning Department's recommendation in refusing this application. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Walker. Members, any questions for Mr. Walker? No, thank you very much. We just return to the public gallery. Members, we're now moving to the next part of the procedure. We're going to hear from the applicant or their agent who will speak in behalf of their application. So I'm going to allocate 15 minutes. I think it's Mr. Malcolm speaking first. Yep.
Hi everyone, I'm Jim Malcolm from JKM Consultancy. I would like to start by just reiterating the history. As we all know, the site was advertised by East Ayrshire Council as a development opportunity and the end use was made clear in my client's offer. I appreciate this isn't a planning matter, but it's still worth raising. The land is now privately owned, so debate over public open space is simply not applicable. It could be tarred over and fenced in tomorrow and no one would get a say in it. This isn't the intention, but the point needs to be made. The report of handling details the issues, however, I feel it's worth summarising as follows. The roads, no objection from ARA. Traffic management plan is a standard and acceptable condition should the consent be granted. The existing street light can be relocated and another one added, and this is quite normal for any development. Network Rail has no objection, Scottish Water have no objection. The material changes from the previous application 23/0642/PP have been addressed and acknowledged as improvements to the proposal. It should be noted that these also seek to address the issues raised by the reporter during the appeal process, and we feel we have done so successfully. The reasons for refusal is the loss of open space. We find it strange that no dialogue was sought throughout the application process with a view to alleviating concerns. I'm involved in a number of applications and many of them receive some form of discussion to address any queries that may arise. There are many current applications that fall into this category. So again, why didn't this application receive the same consideration? The report of handling confirms again that the site is not safeguarded open space in the development plan, but continually describes it as structural and having aesthetic value in an attempt to give it more significance. This seems an overstatement given it is leftover ground adjacent to garaging and not facing onto any houses or in the public view. It is stated in the report of handling that the proposed landscaping to the front elevations doesn't compensate adequately for the perceived loss of open space. We would argue that there is a clear improvement in biodiversity gain between scrub grassland against maintained and landscaped areas. There is the opportunity for this area to be transferred back to council ownership in terms of the green area shaded on the block plan to the front gardens, and that's been agreed by the client. This would then ensure the future use and appearance of the area if it's so important. The DPA didn't accept the loss of open space as a reason to refuse the previous application. Therefore, it's fair to assume they would have a similar outlook should it be presented again. Biodiversity, again, no discussion, which could have alleviated concerns and confirmed the net gain that could be provided. The site has minimal biodiversity at the moment. The proposal can still allow biodiversity to be incorporated should there be a positive outcome and covered by condition, which is actually suggested in the report of handling. This would then create a wildlife corridor from the railway, which should be encouraged. In terms of objections, we fully respect the comments received and would address them as follows. The traffic and roads, as stated, the ARA have no objection. The design, the report of handling acknowledges the design changes have improved the overall proposal, and to quote, a dwelling of this design could be accommodated within the Grange estate. Biodiversity we've already spoken about. Overlooking, confirmed in the report of handling that there isn't an issue. Open space has been discussed. And the noise, the increased traffic, as stated in the report of handling, is a given, however, it doesn't cause unacceptable impacts. So in summary, we are disappointed the application is recommended for refusal and would be happy to answer any queries. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Malcolm. Members, any questions for Mr. Malcolm? Yep. Councillor Lennox.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Mr. Malcolm. Thanks for your submissions there. You mentioned quite early in your statement there that the applicant owns the land and it could be tarred over and nobody could do anything about that. Do you not think it would require a change of use for them to do that? And your statement did sound a bit flippant. Thank you.
No, I don't think it was private ground. it's his to do what he wants. So I don't see how there could be any requirement on him. It's not what he's going to do. I hope I've made that clear, but I just wanted to make that comment.
Councillor Cowan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Mr Malcolm, you mentioned about the opportunity for some improvements in the biodiversity. So has there been anything specified in the landscaping of this new application that would result in such an improvement?
Yes, in the supporting statement that was provided, it was suggested that there could be various options open to us. But again, there was no dialogue to actually firm up what that could have been. But we suggested, and I think someone mentioned as well, about wildflowers, etc., etc. There's lots of opportunities.
Members, any further questions for Mr Malcolm? No. Councillor McGee.
Right, Mr Malcolm, just to go back to the purchase of the land, what was the intended reason given when purchasing the land? Have you got that information available?
I think if what you're meaning is when the offer was made to the council, it was made clear it was to put a house on it. There's no debate about that as far as I know.
I don't see anybody else any questions online or in the room. Thanks very much, Mr Malcolm. Mrs Emma Murray. Mrs Murray, you've still got 10 minutes, your allocated time.
Good morning, members of the committee. My name is Emma Murray. I'm here today speaking on behalf of my brother, Ross Murray, who unfortunately cannot attend due to having a pre-arranged holiday. He did request a virtual link to allow him to address the committee via Teams. However, this request was refused by East Ayrshire Council as it is against their policy. Firstly, I'd like to state that we are very disappointed with the Planning Department's recommendation. Whilst there are no issues with the size, scale and design of the property, the Planning Department have made this recommendation solely on the grounds of loss of open space and the effect that would have on the character and amenity within the Grange estate. Yet it is clearly stated within the report, and I quote, "This application would not be a significant departure from the development plan." So it begs the question, how can so much weight be given to the reasoning behind this recommendation? I'd also like to add, I think some of the comments made by objectors today have been a disgrace. It's become difficult not to feel as though our application is being treated punitively. We have complied with all requirements, yet we've had no guidance to support throughout this process. We feel the relentless pressure placed upon the Planning Department and Council by objectors has had undue influence, and we fear this contributed to an imbalanced evaluation of our case. These objectors have also made formal complaints to East Ayrshire Council with regards to the sale and disposal of the land and an underhanded attempt to conflate issues and impact my application. Additionally, we have had no contact or support from an assigned planning officer, despite East Ayrshire Council stating the planning process should be open, fair and supportive. The only correspondence we have had with our planning officer was by chance after he carried out an unannounced site visit. Fortunately, my dad dropped by whilst he was there, and it was suggested to my dad that should this application be refused, would we consider some other type of development within my garden curtilage. I emailed our planning officer the very next day and he responded promptly with a phone call rather than the usual email communication, so there is no paper trail. I would like to know why this has even been suggested at this time, as my application was not even under review. It leads me to believe the Planning Department had already made their minds up to recommend refusal. During this conversation, I stated my intent clearly that I was happy to work with the Planning Department to sort out any issues that may arise, and I was open to any suggestions that they may have. I expected there would be further contact and support, but that never happened. In later emails, I asked for inappropriate objector comments to be redacted, but once again, no reply. So today, I'd like to give the committee a balanced view, and with that, I'd like to discuss the history of my application and similar applications within the Grange estate, as I believe these are very important. In 2017, on this very site in question, planning permission was granted for change of use on public open space. In 2015, on Beach Avenue, planning permission was granted for change of use again on public open space. And most importantly, in 2023, at Chestnut Place, under MPF 4, planning permission for change of use on public open space was again granted. Granted, granted, granted. In all of these cases, the loss of public open space and I highlight the word public here. My ground is not public, it's private. I purchased this ground in the open market as it's in the council's own words, surplus to their requirements. It again begs the question, why is this loss of open space and the effect it would have on the character and amenity not a concern in any of these previous cases? However, the so-called loss of open space in my application is detrimental to the wider community. This is a disproportionate use of policy. I must add, as the owner of this area of land, I have the right to remove the grass and enclose the site tomorrow, providing no character amenity, and the planning department are fully aware of this. And where were these objectors and so-called saviours of the green space within the Grange estate then? It's quite clearly a case of NIMBYism and people unwilling to accept change. Despite this, we have accepted the previous reasons for refusal and made significant changes to our new application to mitigate the issues raised by the planning department. This application is well considered and has gained significant support from the Grange residents and the local community. In the site plan, you can see the house has been reorientated and repositioned to provide abundance of grassed area to the northern and western boundaries. This area was strategic to provide a more open aspect and an attractive green setting, which will contribute positively to the character and amenity of the area. The addition of the grassed area to the northern boundary to echo the green edge opposite is to give again a more open aspect, improve the visual amenity and connectivity between Maple and Rowan Place. This ground could easily be designated as open space under condition if so desired by the planning department. This is not all we have done. We have offered a net gain in biodiversity through the addition of planting and hedging, none of which exists at the moment. We have designed this home to be in keeping with surrounding area, which will be much more visually appealing compared to what is currently there. Our new application supports local and national planning policies within the MPF 4 and the East Ayrshire Local Development Plan. It is not at odds with planning policies, quite the contrary. The policies the planning department say that we don't meet are effectively one issue, open space and its effect on the character and amenity, which we have clearly addressed. We feel the planning department are beefing up reasons for refusal by disproportionately applying policies. We're making good use of unused brownfield land and private ground. It fits with the idea of 20-minute communities, and it supports the urgent need for housing, especially with the Scottish Government declaring a housing emergency. This isn't just any house. This house will improve the quality, amenity and character of the area, and it's a well thought out home for my sister who genuinely deserves it. In summary, we've listened and we've made substantial changes to this application. The reasons for refusal don't stand up. I would also like to question why the bar is set so high for my application, considering again it would not be a significant departure from the development plan. So we're asking the committee today to look closely at the facts, look past the recommendation and exercise their powers accordingly to approve this application. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Mrs Murray. Members, any questions? Well, thank you very much. Members, at this point, I'm going to close the hearing procedure and hand over to the planning officer to go over any points that's raised during the hearing procedure.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a few bits and pieces just to cover. Most of it is covered in the report, but I'll just clarify a couple of points. It is covered in the report regarding the occupancy of the property, and I appreciate it's a very sensitive issue. There was discussion from the objectors regarding the reporters and where they stay. Just to clarify for committee that anyone can object to an application. It is down to the points that they raise on objection or support, sorry, should have said that. It is down to the points that are raised for material planning considerations where the weight is given. If an area of ground is not maintained on a continual basis, that point was also raised as well. We do have powers to step in regarding a section 179 notice should we require to do so. We haven't done so at the moment and we haven't looked at that matter, but that is open to us in the future should there be a maintenance issue. Overlooking was raised and that is covered regarding paragraph 38 on page 15 of your report in respect of the objections by Mr White. ARA have not objected and are here today if members have any queries. having a wee look through and see what I want to say. Mr. Malcolm did raise the issue that the site could be tarred and enclosed. To do so would actually require planning permission. And although the land is privately owned, in planning terms, it is still open space under the planning approval for the estate. So although it might be privately owned, it is still open space in a planning classification. I don't really have an awful lot left to raise, I don't think. We have assessed the report on its planning merits and the recommendation in front of you. We have not been unduly influenced by any party, and we have assessed it against the development plan and other material considerations. Happy to come back in if anybody needs me to. And I'll settle on that for the moment, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm going to bring in Craig.
Thank you, Chair. I also just wanted to make the point, perhaps at this stage, given a number of the comments made, particularly most recently during the course of the applicant's presentation there, and as referenced there by Fiona, as members are aware, this application needs to be determined in accordance with the development plan, unless material considerations indicate otherwise. I appreciate that as part of the presentation from the applicant, it was suggested to you, excuse me, that a lot has been made of the issue of this area of open space, particularly given the last planning application, and now as this application comes before you for consideration. However, members, as you're aware, as I've said, the determination is that it has to be determined in accordance with the development plan, unless there are material considerations that indicate otherwise. The development planning plan policies have clearly been set out within the report before you for your consideration. But it's not just the council, the planning service, or even the planning committee last year that focused in this area of open space. As members are acutely aware, that following the refusal of the application last year, an appeal was submitted to the Department of Planning Enforcement Appeals, and it was determined by a reporter appointed by Scottish ministers, totally independent of the council and the planning service. And within that decision, the reporter, independently of the council, also sought to focus in on this area of open space and the impact of any development on it, having regard to the housing development as a whole in the area within which it was situated. So it's not just the case that the council is focusing in on that. Somebody independent of the council who looked at this location last year also looked at this to consider whether a house at this location would be appropriate. That decision is a material consideration before you today, and it's for that reason, clearly, those policies have been considered of relevance in terms of the application and why the report has come forward with the recommendation that it has before you.
Craig. So, members, I'm handing over to yourselves for discussion. Any further clarifications? Councillor Count.
Thank you, Chair. And just picking up on what Craig has said there and what has been referenced quite a lot this morning about it being public open space. So I'm just looking for confirmation, although it's in the local development plan, it's in as non-safeguarded open space. Is that correct?
Through you, Chair, that's my understanding, and obviously if planning colleague, if I've got it wrong, they can metaphorically kick me under the table and correct me, but that's my understanding.
Oh, sorry, I thought I had. Obviously not pressed the button, I do apologise. It is non-safeguarded open space, but it is open space, but non-safeguarded in the local development plan.
Councillor McGee.
It feels like kind of deja vu, Ken. The question I'm going to ask is, I maybe asked it the last time or maybe forgot to ask it, but see when we've sold the land, and I ken that sometimes these bits of ground are held really highly by local residents because they contribute to the look of the built area. So how can estates sell public open space knowing that a house is going to be built in it? I just wanted to know, were elected members notified at that time? Because in the past, my recollection is that local elected members are notified when these bits of ground come up for sale, and local elected members can then put in their objections or their agreement or otherwise. Now, again, this maybe doesn't go directly to our decision today, but I would like to understand how two departments are working independently and no talking to each other, if that was the case. And I'm not saying it was, but so I would like some clarity on that and what we're doing in the future so that it doesn't happen again. Thank you.
I can't comment on the sale process, Councillor. I wasn't part of that. What we are receiving, and I have recently received them, are estates are emailing us over to ask us for our planning opinion on the sale of land. I can't comment if elected members are consulted, but we certainly have in recent times been consulted on the possible sale of open land. We will provide a development plan commentary with colleagues in development planning, and we have provided development management comments too. I don't know if Craig can come in any further.
Through you, Chair, while I am aware that there is obviously an extensive history relating to this particular area of ground, I can't, unfortunately, I'm not fully aware of all the specifics. What I can do, Councillor McGee, is clarify the position at that time and also what the position is going forward. Notwithstanding that, I think, as we are aware, clearly that's not a material planning consideration for us today, but I will endeavour to clarify that position for you and revert to you out with this process.
I'm going to begin Councillor McGee and then Councillor Lennox.
No, thanks for that, Craig. I just wanted maybe some clarity, and the applicant gave some examples of open space being granted for change of use. And again, each planning matter has to be based on its own considerations, but I was just wondering if we could get some clarity on those decisions and why it's different for this decision. Thank you.
I think it would come down to the merits of that application, the applications referred to. I don't have access to the files per se just now. I can give you that after, Councillor, but I certainly don't have them here in front of me now. But every application is determined on its individual merits, and the merits of those applications will have merit. The specifics of those applications will have merited those areas of open space. It is quite rare that we will allow or we do agree to areas of open space. We do in certain circumstances, and we have done there. I don't have them to hand immediately just now. I can give you that in the future if you want to, but I don't know if that helps.
Through you, Chair, if it also helps members, my understanding of what Emma Murray was talking about, I think one of the sites was near to this one, and I'm making the assumption, perhaps incorrectly, that members, if you look at the planning history of this site or the planning history at this location, you'll see at paragraph certainly 15 of the papers that there was a change of use application made that was granted on the 17th of January 2017, being, I think that was the date that I think she referred to as part of her presentation. You'll see in terms of that paragraph, it was a change of use of open space at council garage site to storage associated with proposed wooden garage and fencing in retrospect that was approved. So it seems to be obviously in relation to a garage site to storage associated with the proposed wooden garage as referenced in that paragraph. Certainly, as I say, that's what's set out there in the papers. I'm conscious I see folk nodding their head at the back, but I can only go in obviously in the basis of what's, shaking their head. I can only go in the basis of obviously what is in the report before us, and perhaps my planning colleagues who will know more of the planning history can maybe elaborate a bit more on that, given it's in the report.
you quite happy with that, John? Yep. Councillor Lennox?
Sorry, thanks again, Chair. Appreciate we're maybe going down a wee bit side street here in terms of the land, but my memories know the best. But I remember legal officer Mitchell explaining the situation to us back then when the original application came before us. And the land, from memory, was sold without planning permission, and it was kind of agreed at that point in time that that probably wasn't the best practice, and that the lawyer, the applicant's lawyer, should maybe have been involved and kept them right in that respect. I think at the end of the day, it was also stated at that time that there could potentially be an offer for the council to buy back the land as well if a planning application was refused. So it's really just to bring that to bear as well. But I appreciate that we're going down a wee bit side road here.
Have you got a comment on that? Or?
No, obviously I'm conscious that it was my colleague David Mitchell who was at the planning committee the last time round and has been, I think, fully involved in a lot of the detail around this. What I was going to say, I think, just reinforcing what Councillor Lennox has said quite clearly, this isn't a material consideration for the determination of this application. We do need to deal with it on its merits, including not only consideration of the development plan, but also in terms of any material consideration. As I say, quite clearly, the development plan is set out before you. Within the papers, you'll also have heard from the applicants and the objectors in relation to their respective positions on that. There is, as I've said previously, the fact that the reporter's decision on appeal last year is also a material consideration, hence the reason we have focused on the area of ground and the impact on the wider area and the amenity issues. Quite clearly it is the planning services position that, despite the comments or reasons for refusal in the original application and the appeal decision, that this application doesn't fully address them, and hence the reason these matters are still considered relevant for the purposes of the application today and for your consideration and determination.
Members, anything further to add? I think, Craig, you kind of said it right at the beginning of your commentary there, the fact that we had a decision last year, and obviously we fully respect what the reporter's comments are, but I think there has also been significant changes in the application. The fact that the orientation, one of the things, although it didn't comment in the last hearing because it was a unanimous decision, that I wasn't comfortable the way the orientation of the house facing on to Maple Place and the parking at the front, that's been addressed, and I think it's a better fit within the cul-de-sac facing that way. I think the parking solution is in a better place. I'm just putting that out for discussion.
Chair, obviously members were at the point where I'm assuming members had obviously moved past the clarification stage, and we've moved as part of the hearing process to determining the application. Obviously, what I would go back to here is clearly the fact is it is relevant as part of this application to consider the impact of the loss of this space will be on the wider development. And as such, obviously, there is a thought process and a reason having regard to the statutory requirements on the committee to consider that today. But I'm conscious ultimately it's for members to come to a view on the application.
That's great. Councillor Watts, you want to come in?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Following on from what you were saying there, in reality, I understand that obviously it's a different style of building in that respect. However, I would slightly disagree with you to a degree that I really don't think that anything really has changed materially from the previous application when we refused it last year on planning grounds. I think what we refused it on last year, and what obviously the Scottish Government reporter ended up refusing the previous application on, is still fully relevant to this. So I certainly would still support refusal of this application.
Thanks, Councillor Watts. Members, any further questions or Councillor Lennox?
So thanks again, Chair. I'm thinking as well that Councillor Watts is hit the nail on the head for me, that nothing fundamentally has changed and that would change my mind in respect to reasons for refusal on the last occasion, which was substantiated by the reporter. I think, I mean, again, I'd be minded to refuse the application on the grounds stated for refusal by the planning officers. Maybe on this occasion with slight emphasis on the fact that there's a loss to the character and amenity of the local neighbourhood. Maybe put a wee bit more weight on that in terms of what the reporter was saying on the last occasion. But that'd be my opinion, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Lennox. Councillor Cowan.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure if we're moving into the realms of determination at the moment, but for me, today's determination actually hinges on the value that we put on this open space. And I think the site visit earlier this week was very helpful from my perspective to consolidate my position. And just to confirm, although it is open space, it's not safeguarded open space. I believe the applicant has made sufficient material changes to the previous application. Some of the things you highlighted yourself, Chair, the repositioning of the property, relocation of the car parking. There's also opportunities for improving the landscaping both to the northern section of the plot and the hedging round the southern section. And the applicant mentioned there was opportunities for a more open aspect to achieve the net gain in biodiversity. So I think with the changes, the repositioning of the property, which is in keeping with the scale and the size of the development, and the opportunity to do that landscaping, which I believe we could put in as a planning condition. So that's just to reiterate my current view.
That's Councillor Cowan. I don't think we were at a point in determination. I think we were still in discussion at that point. So any further points of clarification, or are we now at a point where we're looking for proposals to reach determination? So, Councillor Watts, you had a proposal in for refusal?
Yes, I'll move refusal. That's quite.
Yep. And Councillor Lennox, you are still in a position to second that?
I'm of the same mind. I would second Councillor Watts' proposal. Thanks, Chair.
Yep. So at this point, I'm asking if there's anybody else otherwise minded. Councillor Cowan.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would move for approval.
Do we have a seconder for that?
Through you, Chair. And would that would be for the reasons that you've previously articulated? Is that because you consider that, notwithstanding what's said in the report, is it your position that you feel it is compliant in terms of a number of those policies? It's just for the purposes of the minute and for folk understanding.
Sure, I could summarise and repeat what I said earlier, if that's helpful. I think the changes the applicant made is compliant with LDP2 DES 1 and NPF 4 Policy 14. The proposal is also within a defined settlement and is a very small scale development. So I would say it was therefore compliant with Res 1 of LDP2 and Policy 16 of NP4. It can also be accommodated within the existing 20-minute neighbourhood, so that would be covered by LDP 2 T2 and NPF 4 Policy 15, and again, just repeating, it's non-safeguarded open space, so that would fall under Res 3, I believe.
I'm grateful for Councillor Cowan for that.
So looking for Councillor Cowan, looking for somebody to second that, if it's Councillor Maitland.
I'll second Councillor Cowan's proposal.
Thanks, Councillor Maitland. So Aileen, I think we've got a proposal under.
Yeah. So we'll move to a vote. So for the amendment for approval in line with Res 1, Policy 16, Policy 15 and Res 3 of the plans, can you, if I shout your name, can you advise if you're for the amendment or for the motion to refuse? Councillor Barton. So the amendment is to approve in line with the policies Councillor Cowan stated, or for the motion is to refuse. So Councillor Barton.
Can I go for the amendment?
Councillor McGee.
Proposal.
Councillor Friel. Councillor Cowan done it. Councillor Sangster.
Proposal.
Councillor Mabin.
Follow proposal.
Councillor Crawford.
Proposal.
Councillor Phillips's not here. Councillor Hogg.
Amendment.
And Councillor Kyle.
Proposal.
So with 8 votes to 4, the motion has been carried for refusal.
Thanks, Aileen. That brings that hearing to conclusion, and as Aileen just said, that the application's been refused. That's per recommendations. I think we'll just give it a minute for if anybody wants to leave the room at this point after this application, the more willing to stay for the whole procedure. Thanks, members. We're moving on to item 4 in the agenda, and that is planning application number 24/0352/PP. And that's siting of shipping container adjacent to recreation ground for storage of tractor and other equipment. This is retrospective at playing field at Jameson Park, Girvan Crescent, New Mills, by Mr. Ian Caldwell, and it's Galston YFC. Members, we do have a hearing for this application as well. Aileen, I think it's only
Just the objective.
just the objective that's here, so that'll be just a single 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Yep. We're okay with that, members? Yep. So I'm going to hand over to David Grant. Or yes. Okay, then Fiona.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm just going to introduce to you, ladies and gentlemen, my colleague David Grant, who's one of our planning officers on our team. David's going to present the application to you. I'm going to do the technical part of slides and happy to answer any questions thereafter. So I'll pass you over to David if you want to stick your mic on, and just let me know when you're ready to do yours.
Thank you, Fiona, and thank you, Chair, as well. This is a local development being presented to the Planning Committee under the Council scheme of delegation, as it's subject to more than 10 separate objections. The application site is located to the southeast of an existing pavilion adjacent to the recreation ground at Jameson Park, which is west of residential properties at Girvan Crescent. The application site is located on safeguarded open space as defined within the East Ayrshire Local Development Plan. The proposal seeks planning permission for retrospectively for the siting of a metal storage container, which is used for the storage of grass cutting and other equipment. Further details are in your report starting at paragraph 3, and there's also an aerial photo of the site and the location plan. Turning to the screens now, I can show you those details and some site photographs as well. So this is the location of the site, sort of circled because the the red line site is quite small as it only contains the shipping container. So you can see it's south to the existing sort of pavilion and west of the recreation ground, sort of between it and the residential properties. This is just a slightly closer view, which also shows the blue line boundaries of other land owned by the applicant. And this is just a bit closer in and showing the size of the shipping container, 5.7 metres by 2.3. This is a view from the south, sort of down towards the A71. And I think the next photo is largely very similar to that, from slightly further over towards New Mills Primary School. With the backdrop of both the pavilion and the residential properties behind. And then this is another view as well, sort of looking up Girvan Crescent again towards the pavilion with the additional flats to the north end of Girvan Crescent as well. And these are just some closer up photos of the structure itself. And its sort of proximity to the pavilion, but still being located on sort of ground outside of this. And again, that's just with the residential properties behind that look out towards the application site. And I believe that's everything. So returning to the report, no objections have been received from consultees, as stated in paragraph 9. In terms of representations, 14 objections were received from 14 different parties, including the local community council. 1 letter of support was received, and all the points raised within the representations are summarised in paragraph 10 of the report. The development plan for East Ayrshire now comprises the adopted East Ayrshire Local Development Plan 2 and National Planning Framework 4, plus associated supplementary guidance. The report before you at paragraph 16 refers to the planning considerations for the application, and these are the principle of the development and the use of safeguarded open space, the impact of the development on visual and residential amenity, plus any impacts on biodiversity. In principle, the siting of a container within a wider area of open space for the purposes associated with that open space is considered to be a reasonable use and is supported by development plan policy. However, that in principle support for the use is subject to other considerations, including the appropriate siting and design of the development so as not to have unacceptable impacts on the character and appearance of the open space and the amenity of any adjacent uses. In this case, the container is considered to be poorly sited with regards to its surroundings, with no proposed mitigation in its design and siting. As a standalone structure, it is prominent in form and relates poorly in visual and amenity terms to the nearby residential properties at Girvan Crescent. The container is of design and of appearance more typical of a temporary storage solution and is not considered appropriate as a long-term storage solution. As such, the proposal is considered to be contrary to policies OS2, RES3, DES1 of the Local Development Plan 2, and 14 and 16 of MPF4. The non-compliance with these policies means that the proposal is also contrary to overarching policy SS2 of the LDP2. The planning service have engaged with the applicant about the concerns, and we've discussed both relocation and/or design and screening options for the container. Despite some discussions on these matters, the siting of the proposal is constrained by the red line boundary. To have moved it would have required a new application. So it was decided that the application needed to be decided on its current merits, and no revisions to the design or appearance were brought forward. So yeah, as such, the application needs to be determined on its current merits. Planning Service does remain committed to discussing these matters further with the applicant on a post-decision basis to explore a different location and/or other design options for the community group that could address some of the concerns raised. The points made in support of the application are noted, as are those of objecting parties, both of which are fully reviewed within the report. The letter of support does not lend sufficient weight to the application to support its approval, and the letters of objection raise considerations that align with the position that the application is contrary to planning policy where relevant. In considering the scheme as proposed and in conclusion, the development is contrary to a number of fundamental policies of the development plan, and whilst compliance with others is or can be achieved, the development is overall considered to be contrary to the development plan. there are no material considerations of sufficient weight that indicate the application should be approved contrary to the development plan. And back to yourself, Chair.
Thanks, David. Members, moving on to the next part of the hearing procedure, where we hear for the objector, who will represent their objection to committee in support of the written objection. So I'm going to ask Mr. Samuel Truesdale to like to come up to the lectern, please. And it'll be 5 minutes, Mr. Truesdale.
Right. Good morning, everyone. As I said there, my name's Samuel Truesdale. I'm the Secretary for the Emulsion Greenholm Community Council. As we mentioned in our comments that we submitted, the Community Council are in general support of the pitches and pavilion being used for the use they were created for by our former Borough Council. We also appreciate the fact that the Community Asset Transfer Agreement with Galston Youth Football Club states that storage containers will be allowed subject to approval. But this approval needs to be through the planning department and not whoever that was that have spoken to within East Ayrshire Council. We would like to see proper procedure being followed, as in planning permission first. We also like to see that the park isn't going to be used as a dumping ground for containers or any other objects that anybody else would like to fire on the park. So concerns were first raised to the Community Council about this container around about autumn 2023, more than a year and a half ago. Inquiries were made as to why it was there and who owned it. We found out it was Galston Youth Football Club, and myself as the Secretary, I was tasked to write to Galston Youth Football Club regarding the container. An email was sent on the 15th of March to the Galston's Secretary, Stephen Robertson, with questions about the container and asking, if possible, to paint the container with a mural to help reduce the visual impact. We received an email back 2 weeks later on the 29th of March saying, I wanted to acknowledge receipt of your emails regarding the container. Matters have been briefly discussed with the Executive Committee and due to be discussed fully shortly. I will return to you soon. And that was the last we heard from Galston Youth Football Club regarding this container before the application went in the 18th of July last year. On the 25th of May this year, 2025, I received a message from the manager of Emulsion Greenholm Athletic Football Club, Ryan Pollock, with a request to meet Stephen Holtman, who's the groundsman for Galston Youth Football Club, just regarding the container. We eventually managed to meet up only last week, unfortunately. Right. Stephen mentioned that a compromise could be to move the container to another area of the park next to a tree line. However, his concern here would be absolutely pitch black and a bigger target for being broken into. He also went on to say that the tractor equipment inside the container is very expensive, so they want to safeguard it. I mentioned that painting a mural on the side would still be an option to make it a focal point rather than an eyesore, and Stephen Holtman agreed. And hopefully Stephen took this back to the committee of Galston Youth Football Club. The Community Council also appreciate the budget constraints that East Ayrshire Council were under. We don't want the park ended up with some of the public parks that's got overgrown so-called wild meadows, and they're happy for Galston Youth Football Club to maintain the extra areas that they have been cutting. The door is still open to the Community Council. However, no one from East Ayrshire Council, Vibrant Communities or Planning or Galston Youth Football Club came forward for any meaningful discussion. We're still willing to listen. We appreciate that the park is on safeguarded open green space. We appreciate it would be a change in the use of the land. It is a very small area, but again, as I said there, with the constraints that East Ayrshire Council are under with the budgets for grass cutting, Galston Youth Football Club are making this park look better than what it would be left under East Ayrshire Council. And that's all at the moment.
Thanks, Mr. Truesdale. At this point, I'm going to ask if members have got any questions for you. Councillor Kyle.
Can I ask of what age is the container?
It was brand new when it was purchased brand new by Galston.
So I take it it's watertight and airtight.
I imagine it will be. It's only like a year and a half old, just over a year and a half old. So I imagine it should be.
The reason I'm asking you, you're going to keep flammable material in it.
Well, Galston Youth Football Club, they have been seen taking.
But if there any chance that's going in fire, if it's airtight, it's going to build up gas.
Aye.
So therefore you're going to have an explosion.
Aye.
That's all.
That's why we need to take the Galston Youth Football Club.
Yeah, just asking the question.
Councillor Count.
Thank you. Mr. Truesdale, I appreciate you said you only met with the Secretary about a week ago. Is that correct?
So that was the groundsman.
The groundsman, sorry, and obviously it has to go back to their committee, but he gave you the impression that they would be amenable to some kind of making it more visually appealing, or perhaps even some sort of greening. Would they be open to that?
Stephen Holtman, the groundsman, he did agree that painting it with a mural. One of the options I mentioned to him was the New Mills Regeneration Association have just recently launched a New Mills app. It's a heritage app, and there's quite a lot of football history in New Mills. So some of the history of New Mills could be painted onto the side of the container. There's links to 2 professional teams in Sweden, in Gothenburg, and also to Barcelona. You'll see that where the container is, it's Girvan Crescent. Jordi Girvan is accredited with scoring the first competitive goal for Barcelona, and he's a former provost in New Mills. So it's just one of the subjects that could be painted as a mural on the side of it.
Through you again, Chair. So the views of the Community Council would be that would be acceptable if it was made more visually appealing, unique to the place, or some kind of screening.
Aye.
If
visually appealing, we did mention fencing it off. We realised that would cost a fortune. So probably making it more visually appealing to help out a youth football club would probably be the answer.
Thank you.
Members, any further questions? Nobody online. Well, thanks very much, Mr. Truesdale. So, as I intimated earlier on, we don't have the applicant here today, so we're not going to hear from the applicant side of things. So at this point, I'm going to close the hearing and hand back over to David. Fiona.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just a few points of clarification. I do believe this came to us as part of an enforcement inquiry. We received a complaint that the container was there. There is obviously a separate to planning process, a lease transfer agreement, etc., with what was Vibrant Communities, and they obviously have their lease criteria, agreed terms, etc. So we have actually had a discussion with what is now East Ayrshire Leisure about making sure that there is a reference to planning consent in any terms, etc. I believe there was just a lack of awareness. It does happen, and it is a breach of planning control, so hence we have the planning application before us. We have engaged with the club, with the representatives, and we have looked at some other locations, but discussions have kind of stalled at the moment, so we are here to determine the application on its merits as it stands. As the report says, we're more than happy to have a discussion, and I've put that in the report on purpose so that we can say, look, if members agree to refuse the application, if that's what your decision is today, we're happy to go back and get another meeting set up, etc. We did meet a representative out there last year, and we have had further email correspondence since then, but we do have to assess the application on its individual merits. We did talk to them about relocating it, cladding it, repainting it in a different colour that's maybe less noticeable than the blue, and what have you. And it's something that we would take forward if members chose to refuse it today and come back with a future application. in a more suitable location, and that's something that we would happily discuss with them. Regarding matters about health and safety, they are out with the planning process. So I really can't make any comments about that. What we're looking at here is the container to house the equipment that's there for the use of the field. I'm happy to leave it at that, and I'm happy for anybody else just to come in if they've got any question, but we are here to determine the application on its merits as it here today. I think it would be difficult, just before I do finish, because something's come back into my head, I think it would be difficult to require them to do like a mural or something. That might be more difficult to achieve, but it's certainly something we can discuss with them in terms of different colours if members go down the refusal route. But obviously it's open to members to determine how they wish to do so today, taking in the recommendation or coming to their own conclusion. Happy to come back in if necessary.
Thanks, Fiona. Can I just get some clarification on something? It's obviously heard the representative of the Community Council. I think sighting of the container doesn't seem to be the issue. It's current visual appeal. If it was, and I'm just asking this question, not determined at this point, is if it was to be permission granted, could it be conditioned that they would have to change the colour or screen it, or?
Yes, if members wanted to grant it and felt that the visual amenity and the sighting was appropriate, other than just the colour, then certainly we can put a condition down for an agreed colour scheme to come back into us. Members could clarify if they wanted it painted a particular colour, if they wish to do so. Maybe not down the mural route, but certainly of a singular colour, for example, green against the grass, etc. We could do that, or you could leave that with delegated to us, but we could have a condition down there that says repaint it, but you're happy with where it's sited. It is a planning judgment, and it is one for members to agree to today, or not.
Thanks. I just want to see if that option was on there. Councillor Cowan, then Councillor Maitland.
So just to follow up on that suggestion, could that condition be time bound? So there could be an expiry period if the club didn't comply. For me, it feels as if this has came to us too early. There's still opportunity to have dialogue between the two groups. So it feels a bit strange for me, this application. I think that's what I'm getting at.
I think the application has been with us for a period of time. You'll see it's a 2024 application. We have had it for quite a while. We felt as if we haven't been getting anywhere. I think in terms of your comment regarding timing, absolutely. If an application comes to us, for example, we want something done before they start development. If it's not been implemented already, then we would say before development starts, you would give us the details and we would then approve them, and then you can carry out the development. Where it's an application that has already been implemented due for whatever reason, we would actually perhaps we could say a time limit of within a month of the date of this consent. You would give us the applicant would give us the details of the colours, revised colours of the container. So we would agree that with them, and then within, for example, maybe 3 months of the and I'm saying this, for example, just depending on time of year, etc. Within 3 months of the our approval being given to the colour details, if that's appropriate, depending on whether you want it a specific colour or not. If then we would expect that to be painted by that point. There is a little bit of flexibility allowance, because obviously if there was, for example, a period of really inclement weather, etc., and that fell within the time frame, we could come and go in that a little bit, because we would have that discretion. I would hope with the applicants, but there's absolutely fine time. That was a very long answer to give you that answer, but yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Fiona. I think Craig's want to come in.
Through you, Chair. I think that what I think is coming through loud and clear is we have a youth football club there. They're providing a community kind of benefit, and it's how the matter is resolved when it would appear that what we're down to here is what I think we're hearing is the sighting's okay. It's just more how it looks, and it's how that is dealt with. I think Fiona has clearly articulated there are options there. The other option is if you deal with the matter before you, and in the event you were to go with the recommendation, as I understand it, you know, they would be able to submit a fresh application. I don't think that would attract a fee, is my understanding, although it would have to be slightly materially different. So it might have to, and by that it might mean that the container might need to, I think, be moved slightly to allow that to happen. So in terms of an application fee, my understanding would be that that wouldn't be something they would have to pay. The other option is, as you say, as Fiona has clearly articulated, if you were minded to approve it, there are conditions that could be put in place. My understanding of the application is, as with all shipping containers, you wouldn't necessarily, they're more temporary structures. So if you were minded to approve, I would suggest that any application would be very much time limited, because you would normally look, I think, anywhere but up to 5 years, because they are temporary in nature. And I think the advice that would often be given to folk who are looking to put shipping containers down is, by the end of that period, you would look to see a more permanent solution on the ground rather than just a shipping container. So it is almost, it would be a temporary measure. And if members were looking at that quite clearly, as Fiona said, there are conditions you can look at, but I would think members, you would also want to consider a temporary nature to this, because, as we say in general terms, a shipping container is a temporary structure. It's not something you would be expecting on site long term.
Thanks for that. Yep. Councillor McGee.
I'm not so sure that the site of the container is appropriate, because one of the objections was the proposal adversely impacts the visual amenity of the area. So I'm not sure that objection is maybe for houses directly opposite, whereas maybe the container could have been tucked in round the other side. But I'm not trying to tell the club where they should position the container, but I would have thought that would have been subject to further discussions with the planners, who have already publicly stated they're willing to have further discussions with them. So I'm not so sure that it is just as easy as making the temporary structure a different colour or whatever. I think it's maybe the fact that it's positioned in the wrong place. Thank you.
Just to clarify, Councillor McGee, yes, a lot of the local objectors are opposite where the container is located. So just to clarify that point for you.
Councillor Maitland, then Councillor Maven.
My original question was answered about the temporary nature of the structure, so thanks for that, Craig. We're being asked to make the decision appropriate siting and design, and I do not believe it is appropriate site. Design, again, subjective, there's something we could do with that. And I appreciate that what could maybe have solved this before it even came to planning with some discussions and some robust discussions among the different committees involved here. No one seems to be against the principle of it, so I think a sit-down discussion. But as it stands, I don't know how we can agree it's not an appropriate site, but we're not sure how to mitigate it. So at the moment, I'm still with the refusal stage, but I would much prefer to see some ongoing dialogue between all the different groups involved. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Yes, happy to do so. We've said that we have had discussions in contact before. I think if you're not happy with the visual the sighting as well as the visual appearance and design, then we can take that away as part of the refusal. That is detailed in your reasons for refusal today, and we can hopefully try and arrange a meeting with the applicant and their advisors.
Councillor Maven.
I think I'm probably covering all ground. I agree with Councillor McGee. That's probably sited in the wrong place. Looking at the map of the area, there's other options where it could be sited further away from the houses. So get it resited, paint it green, and I'm pleased to hear that our planning officers would support the club in trying to get that achieved.
Fiona, can I just ask, if it is refused, would the club have to move what time period would have to shift the container?
I think we would be reasonable, councillor. I think we would try and get an early meeting with them to try and get an early application back in from them, and then we can discuss getting the application and seeing how that goes, and then hopefully having it relocated shortly after determination, if indeed it was to be approved. Would that help?
Councillor Maitland?
Are we ready for deliberation? Right, so to come to decision.
Unless there's any other questions from members. No, I think we are now. Councillor Maitland.
I propose we go with the paper for refusal in terms of OS2, Res 3, NP 14 and 16. Thank you, and lots of dialogue.
So we've got a second for Councillor Maitland. Is there anyone else otherwise minded? No. Can you just record that?
For the purpose of the minute, the application has been refused for the reasons determined in the report, encouraging future discussions with the club.
Thank you very much, Eileen. Okay, members, moving on to the final item in the agenda, and that's planning application number 24/0397/PP. And that is planning application under section 42 of the Town and Country Planning Scotland Act 1997 to vary conditions 6, 7, 9 and 10 of planning permission 20/04225/PP. And that's to allow the extension and operational life of the wind farm from 25 to 35 years. The Overhill Wind Farm B741 from Armour Wind to U720 Dalricket, Dalmellington, East Ayrshire by Michael Briggs. That's Energy Contour UK Limited. Yes, I think we need to shorten these. So I'm going to hand over to David.
Thanks, Chair. Morning, members. The purpose of this report is to present a major development scale planning application for determination with the Planning Committee. The application site is located to the north of the B741 between New Cumnock and Dalmellington. The development is a Section 42 application to vary an existing planning consent to extend the operational period of the wind farm from 25 to 35 years. No physical changes are proposed. The details of the application and the details of conditions 6, 7, 9 and 10, which are proposed to be varied, are set out at paragraphs 6 to 14 of the papers. Consultation responses are set out at paragraphs 19 to 32, noting that no consultee has raised an objection, subject to use of appropriate conditions and reattaching existing conditions of the previous consent. One letter of objection has been received as set out at paragraphs 33 and 34. This application is one of 4 Section 42s that have been submitted by this applicant, all at the same time for the same site. This is the first one coming before you. There's another 2 that will come to you probably after summer recess. And there's a final one which has been appealed on the grounds of non-determination. Each Section 42 essentially builds on extra changes from the previous. So this is the lowest level one in terms of changes. There's no physical changes to this one, and we'll bring the other ones up when they're ready. They've been subject to further environmental information, which has delayed them coming up to committee, so we'll bring them up to you in the near future. I'd usually share some visual details of the development, but as this application is no physical change, it's just going to restrict it to the site plan and layout, just for your awareness, if you bear with me. So that's the site location there, members, just off the B741. Members will be aware of the North Kyle wind farm site visits. This wind farm essentially sits in between the 2 almost legs of North Kyle. So there's a smaller wind farm to be in this location, and it's had consents previously, and it's been subsequently varied previously as well. And that is the layout of the development coming from the B741 in the south. Through the site, there's a borrow pit and the various turbine locations and the kind of two legs developed through the kind of forested areas of the site. Short and sweet presentation there, members. Just turn to the assessment now. The key matters of interest are set out from paragraphs 38 to 97, noting that the application is made under section 42 relating to the determination of applications without complying with conditions previously attached, and that whilst it is usually solely just a matter of the conditions that require consideration under such applications, consideration of the overall effect of granting permission is not precluded. Noting that LDP 2 has been adopted since permission 200425 PP was granted by the reporter, an assessment against that plan is appropriate. Having undertaken that assessment, it is noted that no new significant effects are predicted beyond those already found to be acceptable, with the key effect generally being that the duration of the significant effects are extended in time by an extra 10 years, and also noting that the benefits of the development would also be extended over a longer period. Subject to the attachment of appropriate conditions to any new consent, the development is considered to generally comply with the development plan. The letter of objection is not considered to carry any weight in this application, as the lack of physical change to the development means that there is no impact on turbine spacing between Overhill and North Kyle, and therefore no adverse effects on North Kyle Wind Farm. Whilst the applicant has applied to only vary conditions in respect of the time period for the operation of the wind farm, under section 42, it is open to the planning authority to alter, delete or add conditions. To that effect, some further revisions and additions to the conditions are suggested that account for the updated development plan position, current good practice, and to better meet the tests for conditions under Circular 4/1998. These are explained from paragraphs 83 to 93, but include revisions to the duration of consent condition beyond that applied for, also to the Habitat Management Group, to the Construction Traffic Management Plan, Protected Species Surveys, Water Quality and Fish Monitoring, Environmental Clerk of Works, Aviation Lighting and the Replacement Forestry Planting Scheme. New conditions for a Skills and Employment Plan, a Bird Protection Plan and a Financial Guarantee are also suggested. Conclusions are at paragraphs 98 to 102, noting that the revisions to the conditions proposed by the application are considered to be acceptable and compliant with the development plan, but that these should be supplemented by further changes as previously set out. As set out in section 42 of the Act, where it is decided that planning permission should be granted subject to different conditions from the previous consent, the application should be granted. Members should note that this would be a new planning consent. It doesn't replace the existing one, so that the applicant would then hold two consents at the same time if it was approved. Legal and financial risk implications are set out paragraphs 103 to 109, noting that the applicant would be expected to enter into a revised legal agreement with the council reflecting the new grant of consent. The applicant has agreed to this in principle. Finally, proposed planning conditions as amended are set out page 61 to 93 of the papers, with the recommendation being to approve the application subject to those revised conditions and the conclusion of a legal agreement prior to the issue of the consent. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, David. Members, any questions? Yeah, Councillor McGee.
Just say there are no physical changes, but see paragraph 34, representations, talking about increased turbine sizes. So just for some clarity there.
No problem, Councillor. The objection actually was submitted against the 4 applications by the adjacent wind farm. There is a bit of, this is all to do with the spacing to prevent the performance of the turbines being affected. So there has to maintain that distance. So the representation is relevant for some of the other section 42 applications where the turbine sizes are proposed to be increased, which will potentially eat into the separation distance. But for this particular application, there's no physical change, so nothing changes. So they've submitted a catch-all objection against all 4 applications, but our assessment is it doesn't affect this one because there's no physical changes. It is relevant to the other applications, and we will discuss that in those reports as they come to you.
Yeah, and I think it's just unfortunate we're not getting all the section 42 applications all at one go, so we're just taking them piecemeal. So, members, any further questions? Are we happy to approve the recommendation, page 36, paragraph 2? Oh, sorry, Councillor McGee.
Another question just for clarity. So if the next section 42 comes and they want to put in bigger blades, so to speak, and we've already accepted this, could we object then, or can we say no?
Each application's on its own merits and they are different. So if you were minding to approve this one, it doesn't affect your position on the next one. You would essentially just be looking at what the particular changes are that the applicant's proposing and the subsequent applications. As I said, each one is slightly different. It's almost like a kind of scale effect. That this is the lowest level, most basic change. There's no physical change, just the time, up to the what I would say is the fourth most complex application, which is the one that they've appealed. That one increases the turbine size and various other things on the site. The two that will come to you are somewhere in the middle of that change, so that'll all be explained when they come, but it doesn't, proving this one doesn't prevent you coming to a different view on the merits of the next applications as they come up.
Thanks for that. Thank you.
Councillor Lennox.
Thanks, Chair. David, do you have any expertise or planning expertise concerns about no bringing all four of these to this committee at the one time?
No, because we would still determine them on their own merits. My preference would have been to bring them all to committee at the same time. But for awareness, the two that remain with us required further environmental information. So there was a delay in the applicant providing that to us, and then we have to go out to public consultation on the basis of that. So those two have been delayed through that extra process that's taken place. That wasn't needed for this application, and we're required to determine applications as quickly as we can. So this one was ready to come in front of you. So yeah, we had that discussion of do we wait and bring them all? But there was no reason to not bring this one. The other two should come at the same time, so you'll be able to see the differences between them. Unfortunately, the one that appeal won't come to you. We did ask the reporter if we could delay a response to that to get committee's view, but that wasn't allowed with the reporter, so we'll offer officer comments on that one as best we can in terms of the merits of that. So, but yeah, my preference would have been each one, and I could have talked you through the relevant changes. It's just not quite worked out like that, I'm afraid, Councillor.
Everyone happy with that explanation? Yep. So any other further comments? Are you happy to go with the recommendations in page 36, paragraph 2? Yep. Well, thanks very much. That concludes today's business.